Good evening. Everybody dry? Today's readings are the third and final set of a group of parables about the kingdom of God from Matthew's Gospel. We have three parables again, just as we had the last 2 weeks, two of which are very closely linked in meaning, with slight differences. The people of Jesus' time would have understood these parables completely. They were drawn from the simple, everyday acts of life, something they knew very well. The first two parables, in effect, are saying that if one is to know God and to live according to the gospel, that is the most precious thing in life. Through Jesus, we come to know and understand the real meaning of our lives. We see what is important. He helps us to put a value on finding the kingdom of God. These parables, he actually was speaking directly to his disciples. They would have heard the message because you have to remember, these were the people who had left their families and their homes to follow him. They had already given up quite a bit in search of the treasure. In that first parable, Jesus compares entering the kingdom to a man who finds a lost treasure in the field. Sounds a little strange to us, but in those days, we have to remember, an ordinary person couldn't put his savings in a bank. What they did was they found a place to bury their treasure, their values, hoping that they had picked a place someone would not find. The poor man's safe was the earth. And every now and then, people found a treasure buried somewhere. So they were always kind of on the lookout for it. It was not that greatly unusual for someone to have found a treasure. And in accordance with Jewish law, if you found a treasure, it was yours. So everyone rejoiced with you. You didn't have to turn it over to the government. Recently, a rare Chinese vase was discovered in the attic of a French couple. It was sold at auction for $19 million. The modern world's version of buried treasure. And in this parable, this first one, we have to realize that it's an ordinary man who finds the treasure. The field doesn't belong to him, but he somehow does whatever he can to get enough money so that he can go and buy the field and the treasure. And the message is clear. When you really do discover Jesus in your lives, you discover his vision of the kingdom, there is nothing worth more. That's when we have to wake up and do what it takes. The second parable is similar. This time it's a businessman who's out looking for fine pearls. And when he finds that one that exceeds his imagination, the greatest thing he has seen, he goes and sells everything he has in order to buy it. Slight difference between the two, if you think about it. In the first, the buried treasure, the man wasn't looking for treasure, but he found it in the course of his ordinary life. Jesus and the kingdom of God can come to us at any time through some experience that we may have. There's a need, as the gospel constantly tells us, to be ready, to be prepared, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's coming our way. We don't know what we will find. The second parable, a little bit different. This is a man who was on the lookout for that pearl of great price. He knows it exists, but then he finds it. And now he does what he needs. And that speaks to the other side of us. As baptized Christians, we are called always to be on the lookout for the things that will lead us to the kingdom of God. And it's in this context we should look back at that first reading of Solomon. A young Solomon is told by God, "Ask of me, and I will give it to you." Solomon didn't ask for riches, power, or material things. He asked for that understanding heart. He asked for the wisdom to know right from wrong. Proverbs tells us that wisdom is more valuable than silver or gold, pearls, or any other gems. Kind of a reminder that maybe we should rethink our everyday values, our everyday thoughts of what we think is important. We could have our thoughts misplaced. Wisdom allows us to see what is important in life. It is indeed that pearl of great price. The one who truly sees, the true disciple says to Jesus, "Lord, let me see." And if we can really see, our eyes are not cluttered, we're not blinded, we're not confused. Like many of the blind men in the gospel, when they are given vision, they see Jesus for who he is. The one who truly sees is the one who has wisdom. And the one who has wisdom can see the pains and joys of this life, how to deal with them, and how they can use them on their journey to the kingdom. That wisdom, this is the treasure hidden in a field. This is the pearl of great price. For much of our lives, we chase false treasures, money, status, pleasure. We get locked into the past, or we allow ourselves to be looking too far into the future. And we walk right by the present as the opportunities come our way for that true treasure. And this kind of brings us to that third parable, which is a little bit different. The first two speak of commitment, dedication, and what it will take to find the kingdom of God. But the third parable kind of brings us back to earth. No wishing here. It's basically good fish, bad fish. Kind of like we had the rocky soil and the good soil. We had the wheat and the weeds the last couple of weeks. This is just a third parable with a similar lesson. Jesus tells us that God will do the separating in his own time. It's not for us to be caught up in worrying about that. He reminds us the kingdom is a mixture of sinners and saints, and we will all be caught up in the same net as we are. The time to separate will come later. Throughout Matthew's gospel, Jesus warns us that to enter the kingdom isn't easy. It will require wisdom and perseverance. It requires us to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy of our love. We should find joy in sharing the gospel with everyone by loving others, not just a select few, not just the ones we like, not just our friends or those that could help us. But when we say everyone, we do mean everyone. That love is that respect, that recognition that we are all created in the image and likeness of God. Funny thing about parables, they give us something to think about that's kind of disruptive. It's not the normal way we look at things. And in many ways, this pandemic we're dealing with is kind of like a parable. Everything we know has changed. Everything's totally different. It's been disrupted. It doesn't work the way it used to. Just churches, schools, work, stores where we go shopping, doctor visits, even getting a haircut. Nothing is as easy as it used to be. We all have to think about it differently if we're going to do it safely. We're seeing the world differently today. We're doing things differently. We're living differently. But today still, we are called to use our time wisely, to go in search of that treasure, that pearl of great price. People find the kingdom in many ways. Some come across it by accident, like a buried treasure, and some after a long and patient search, like that pearl of great price. But in either case, it is worth our time and our efforts to seek that treasure that is hidden deeply in our hearts.